The God of Israel is one you can wrestle with. Not some sort of distant deity that you would have to believe in or bow in front of. Someone you can wrestle with. Greek philosophies have asked themselves, what's the nature of God? And they came up with an unmoved mover, like that initial push that everything needed for its being, for creation, for an unmoved mover, right? Every movement has to start somewhere, and there must be a beginning somewhere. So you can think of an unmoved mover, but you can't really ever touch it. Or in thinking, Anselm of Canterbury came up with a definition of God that says, God is that thing than which nothing greater can be conceived. So God is the biggest thing you can think of in that theory. Or Spinoza came up with the opposite and said, no, we don't need an unmoved mover or a greatest thought. God is the indwelling and not the transient cause of all things. So God is in all things. It's not like God does stuff, but everything is God. All those great big thoughts and words, Israel defies. Because Jacob is one who fights with God. Those great thinkers spoke into their situations. Jacob spoke in his. And that wrestling with God comes with its own imagery. And we have another great philosopher who has 8 rules for us on how to treat that situation. Let us listen to Brad Pitt for a second.
Every week, Tyler gave the rules that he and I decided.
Gentlemen, welcome to Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club. Third rule of Fight Club, someone yells stop, goes limp, taps out. The fight is over. Fourth rule, only 2 guys to a fight. Fifth rule, 1 fight at a time, fellas. Sixth rule, no shirts, no shoes. 7th rule, fights will go on as long as they have to. And the 8th and final rule, if this is your first night at Fight Club, you have to fight.
So that's what fighting goes like. It comes with its rules, and you have to fight. Basically, that's a very powerful experience of religion. But we do have a problem. Someone must have talked, because we heard the story. Someone spilled it. Someone shared about that fight club between God and Jacob. Someone broke the first 2 rules. Otherwise, we wouldn't have it in our Bible. And what we learn is that both Jacob and God, they don't abide by the rules. They don't play fair. Actually, by the very definition of that story, God is one who breaks the rules. They were wrestling. Wrestling is a situation where you grab someone, you throw him, you pin him. But what God does is he starts hitting in a wrestling match. That's not fair. You don't do that. Mixed martial arts weren't invented. They were wrestling. It's supposed to be a clean fight. Nope. God virtually took the gloves off and declared that everything goes. That, on the other hand, triggers something in Jacob. Jacob all of a sudden knows why he's in that fight. And he yells at God repeatedly, I will not let you go unless you bless me. I will not let you go unless you bless me. According to the Fight Club rules, he shouldn't have even been in that fight anymore. Because God being unfair, hit him in a way that he almost went limp. So the fight should have been over after that hit. Wasn't. The rules were all gone. They still keep going. And Jacob cuts right to the chase. I will not let you go unless you bless me. And that's important to have an intention in a fight that you enter. We're here in that kind of situation where we're wrestling with God. That's why we come here. To expose ourselves to that fight. To be in touch with God and struggle. What is your intention? Are you like Jacob looking for blessing? Are you like Moses looking for freedom? Are you like looking for equality, for understanding? What's your intention in this fight? What we've seen so far is that the art of religion and the art of war are essentially one. The very name of Israel means he was struggling with God. And that's what we ought to do. Struggle with God. Fight. Wrestle. God isn't one that wants devotion or reverence. God didn't even fight fair. Don't mix that with struggling with church and tradition and all that. That's a different matter. But actually, when you're in touch with God and in that fight all day and all night, that has some effect. Because struggling changes your life. It's a tough workout for one, but then also Fight Club, if you remember that movie, it was therapy. After a good fight, you feel every single muscle in your body. There are hardly moments where you feel more alive than after a good fight. All the adrenaline and the warmth. And it gives you a new outlook and focus. You see what really matters. And the rage during the fight, that ecstasy. Do you have such a relationship with God? Where the gloves are off and everything goes? Well, you have to have an intention to enter that fight. And only with that you will gain that therapeutic effect from it. But that's not all. Because all that fight talk, you might not be that wrestler type, but still that story has three consequences for you as well. There's a new name in it. Jacob turns Israel. Used to be like that when we baptized babies, or adults for that matter. Traditionally, when you were baptized, you received your new Christian name after your pagan Roman name that you had in the Roman Empire. And you were then baptized into a new life of Christ. You received your Christian name. Just like Jacob turned to Israel after that fight. Now, baptism doesn't grant access to salvations, but it does give you a label. You're part of that Fight Club, whether you're a fighter or not. But having that label on you, that you're part of this club, where membership matters and people can actually tell by the label that you wear that you're part of that group, that is in that struggle, and that is engaging in that kind of situations. And also can give you a new practice, something to do. There's a reason that story is in the Bible, and it's not because fighting is so cool or Jacob is the best guy. It is because it's the story of the origin of why that one thigh muscle is excluded to the kosher rules of eating. At the very end of the story, we learn that one thigh muscle Jews don't eat to this very day because God hid that on Jacob. You can tell God's people by things they do or don't do. Jews to this day refrain from certain foods. What's your thing? How can people tell from your actions that you relate to the God of Israel? What's your thing? What makes you Israel? After church, we'll have 3 samples in the fellowship hall for you, where you can look at spiritual practices that you can incorporate for this new year for a longer period. Also, there's a new place. After that fight, Jacob named that place where he wrestled with God, he named it Peniel, because Jacob saw God's face. When you fight someone, you better see their face, right? So that was a special place for Jacob. What is your sanctuary? Where did you see God's face? Maybe on the mountaintops, maybe on the beaches, maybe on campus, maybe in a library, maybe in a soup kitchen, serving or receiving, or both. What's your special place where your initial fight took place? Are you willing to pick up that wrestling with God? Do you have a goal in this fight? Have you seen gain from this battle? Are you willing to break the rules and spread the word about this fight club? Fight.